Congratulations! If you've made it this far, give yourself a little pat on the back because you've made it to the Advanced Graph Editor podcast. I say give yourself a pat on the back because most people, when they see or hear about the graph editor, they exit out and run away. So kudos to you for trying to learn more about what looks to most like, RGB spaghetti. So what I have here is a little sort of bouncing ball, real simple, just to kind of go over some advanced techniques that some of which you may already know, but other stuff you may not and may want to start implementing. With that, I'll jump into just grabbing this little ball here, and if I go ahead and frame my curves, you'll notice that I've got this huge curve going on with like 1080 degrees of rotation. Now, because of this, you can't really see my translate Y because it's only, moving at like 11.474 here down to nearly nothing. So how is it that I can see this but I can't see those at the same time? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is a way. If you go to View, Display Normalized, go ahead and hit that and press the F key. What this does is it takes all of your curves and fits them between 0 and 1. And actually, if I had any curves with the value of negative, it would go between 0 and -1 as well. But because these are all positive numbers, that's what we get. So now we can see the ups and downs of our ball bounce and the 1080 degree rotation of our rotate Y here. So that's a little interesting tool that some people like to use a lot. But I'm going to jump back to turn off the display normalized. One little bonus here is if you would like to enable normalized curve display, you can also do it right here and turn it off quickly. So that's what these two do. So what I'm going to do now is jump into just the little ball bounce we got going on here. I will assume that you guys know all about our spline, clamp, linear, flat, step, and plateau curve interpolations. And you know about breaking tangents and unifying tangents. So you break the tangent, you're able to do that. And if you unify it, brings it back to happy days. So there we go. But what you may not know of is what is known as the buffer curve snapshot. Now to turn this on, you'll have to go to View, Show Buffer Curves. Go ahead and turn that on. And what this does is, if I select this curve, I can go ahead and hit the Use Buffer Curve Snapshot. And what that will do is snapshot this curve that I have here. And I can take this and manipulate it, and you might be able to see this very subtle gray line of where my curve once was. Well, by default, 2011 has a really dark gray in this graph editor, so it kind of makes that hard to see. If you'd like to make it easier to see, you can go ahead and go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Color Settings. You go ahead and hit that and go to Inactive Animation, Buffer Curves. So in here, you can go ahead and make it any color you'd like. I'm just going to make it black so it kind of shows up sharply on there. In here, though, if you'd like, there's a lot of interesting stuff. You can actually go to Animation Editors, and this will allow you to change the color of your graph editor. So if I wanted to, I could be like, I want these to be black lines, I want these to be sharper, I want these to be lighter, whichever you prefer. And you can also change the background. I wouldn't throw a color there if I were you, but hey, to each his or her own. You can also go into the color changing of the dope sheet as well. So for those of you who think it's kind of a bland sort of background on that thing, you can drop some different colors in here as well. But with that, now we have our buffer curve snapshot. What's cool about the buffer curve snapshot is you can manipulate your curves, and as you manipulate them, it'll show you where you were before you started changing your curve, and you can actually, by hitting this swap buffer curve, you'll switch between one and then the other. Kind of a snazzy little tool. Instead of having to Z back or whatever, you can kind of just look at how it affects your character. So if I go here, or let's say one with a bigger change, move this up a little bit, and I swap it back and forth, you can see how that actually affects the curve and go back and forth. So you can hit this, play through, and go, oh, that's weird. All right. And then back to normal. So nothing too crazy there. But that's something that I tend to use quite a bit if I'm doing some curve editing or what have you. But I will turn that off for the time being. Now another thing that you may or may not use, this is sort of a limited use, but some people do use it. I myself do from time to time. If I have, in this instance, we have a ball bounce, but what this could be, a head shake, where your character is like, oh no way, shaking his head left and right. This could be a rotate Y, where the head's going back and forth. You could essentially take this and go, I actually think that the head should shake more. Well, if you hit your scale tool and grab the base value, you can actually scale this up, and it will scale your entire animation upward. I'm still in normalized, so take it out of normalized. You can see how you can manipulate these values, and now my ball bounce is going to be ridiculously high. But that is the scale key. And keep in mind, whatever you have selected, it will scale from wherever your cursor is. So if I start like here, I can scale these keys outward, and then it'll take whatever your initial value or your initial direction is. So if I, hold shift and middle mouse my cursor upward, that'll scale these up based on where my cursor is. But if I shift middle mouse to the right, it'll scale them outward in time. Keep in mind though, that when you scale in time, almost always, it will drop your keys to be frame, this key is frame 13.2, so it's not going to be on a whole integer here. It's going to be on, subframe, more or less. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind if you are scaling your keys, and that goes for if you're on the timeline as well. If you use these external arrows on either side here, these also scale your keys and can lead to issues because, as you can see, my cursor is on frame 16, and this value, if I go and grab it, is actually like 16.344, which is not a whole number. Those who are going to be rendering your scene and stuff might hate you for that. Be like, motion blur isn't going to work very well, and your pose is, pretty much between 15 and 17, in a weird way. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to insert a key. You probably already know this one as well. The Insert Keys tool is way up here in the upper left-hand corner. I use this from time to time if I'm looking to say, like for this, if I want 2 down positions, I can go ahead and middle mouse, and on your computer it might show like a golden vertical line. But you just middle mouse and drop it wherever you'd like it. I mean, I can go around here and just be like, woohoo! Just go crazy. But yeah, I want to go ahead and drop this and have 2 down positions. I can take this value, 0.939, as I can see way up here. I can grab this and type in 0.939. Boom. I now have 2 down positions. So that's a relatively simple way to drop in a key. There's also the Add Keys tool, which I don't really use, but it's there for you if you can find a use for it. All it does is essentially the Insert Keys tool, only whatever you're going to drop it on, it takes wherever your cursor is. So if I'm like way up here, let's say, and I'm above, I don't know, frame 13, I can select the curve and middle mouse, and it then will let me just kind of place this key wherever I'd like to. So if I'm like, oh, I want this character to go up here, cool, you can do that. So that's a little bit more intense, but it has its purpose. And lastly, over here, there's the lattice deform keys. This is an interesting tool if you'd like to sort of scale your keys up and down as well. You can go ahead and like grab this, and it works just like a lattice. I can grab these points here and bring these up, bring these down. If you want to just take this and you can manipulate how your curves work, you can get a really interesting interpolation through here. So that's sort of an interesting tool. That's, again, kind of a limited use, but it's there for you, obviously. Now, one thing that I generally use from time to time that not a lot of people know about, and I mean, I guess it is somewhat of a limited use as well, but I'll show it to you and, take it and do with it what you will. How's that? What this little tool does is it creates weighted tangents. Now you'll be like, well, what is a weighted tangent? You'll notice that these curves, tangents, have sort of changed. Why are these, solid, and these are, have a little hole in there? Well, what this essentially does is you'll notice that we have our, break tangents, unify tangents. There's free tangent weight, and there's lock tangent weight. These tangents that have a opaque little circle there, these are locked tangent weights. So I can't really do much more than what a normal tangent would be able to do with this. But if I took these, which have a unlocked or free tangent weight, I can take this and instead of putting in an extra key or taking this tangent and breaking it and sharpening this, I could take this and make it as sharp as I'd like by just holding shift and middle mouse dragging left or right. So that gives you an interesting perspective on, what if I want this to really hold for a long period of time? I can take this guy, break it, and make a really sharp in without having to put, an extra key in here to have a nice fall off. You can just grab this tangent weight, and now I'll have a really subtle fall for that ball over here as I scrub through. So, boom. So the tangent weights thing is kind of interesting. One thing to watch out for when you have tangent weights is if you throw a key in, that will happen. Now this is a really ugly thing to experience here. If you throw in new keys on top of weighted tangents, they'll give you this like sort of tweaked curve, which might look cool, but it doesn't in your animation, unfortunately. So that's just one thing to be wary of. If you do mess with weighted tangents and you go back and drop a key, on like frame 5 or something, you're going to get weird interpolations. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. It's, great for the ease of use, but, it's also difficult to edit. So keep that in the back of your mind when using weighted tangents. Lastly, there is an interesting tool that not a lot of people are aware of. For those of you who kind of like working in the graph editor a lot, but don't like having to go back to, okay, I want to see what frame 24 is so I can see where the ball is when I edit this. Okay, I want to bring this up here. If you don't want to have to go back and forth from your timeline to your graph editor, to your timeline to your graph editor, you can actually hold K in the graph editor, and it's sort of a mini timeline, or larger timeline, I guess. So you can be like, okay, I want to go to frame 31. Cool. Now I can edit this and move this up and see how it works. And then go, okay, I want to go to 37. Cool. Now I can move that up. Awesome. So you can make these edits without having to go back and forth between, your timeline and your graph editor. Kind of a nice little tool. Some people use it, some people don't. It's No big deal. I myself use it from time to time, but with dual monitor setups, I'll keep my graph editor pretty far across on a different monitor. So I'll usually be working in here, drop it into where I'd like it, and then go over to the graph editor and make my edits. But that is there for you. I hope that was informative. Quite a few things to take in, but I'm sure several of them you already knew about. But hey, hopefully you learned something out of there. It wasn't a total waste of time. I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.